Hello and welcome to the Retainer Explainer webinar with Nimbus. I'm Mike Crook, your host. I'm the Managing Director of Nimbus. My background, whilst is in software, it's also in the agency world, and my previous agency I ran had 90% subscription-based revenue. So I'm really excited about this one and to jump in today with our guest, Duncan Shotton from the award-winning Bristol-based web design and build agency Atomic Smash. Hello, Duncan.
Hello.
Thanks for coming in. Now, we're all familiar with the traditional agency model, which is all about project-based income, creating those sort of roller coaster revenue spikes in your business, and that endless cycle of pitching, delivering, and then doing it all over again. It's kind of not easy, really, and many agencies find themselves in this loop with perhaps very little focus on the potential that lies within a reoccurring business model once that project is live, especially if you're a website agency. I know I certainly found that when I was running an agency, that clients often look what's coming next. So the need perhaps to keep the site up to date or performing at its best and generating those leads and those sales. But where some agencies see challenges, others see opportunities, and that opportunity to sort of reinvent their business model and turn these challenges into steady income streams for their agency. And that's precisely what the star of today's show, Atomic Smash and Duncan, have done. So Duncan's the head of Always Evolving, which is a name we've given to their retainer offering, and I'll let Duncan explain more about that in a minute. But he's here to share how they transform their project-based income to a dynamic sort of always-on model that supports clients on a month-on-month basis. And they do still build and design websites, but their main focus is getting clients on board with their monthly retainers. So before I do hand over to Duncan, if you want to ask any questions, you can do in the chat as we go. Duncan's going to go through the presentation. So over to you, Duncan. Let's, take it away.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for joining everyone. So the name of the presentation is Designing the Service Machine. I will get straight into it. My name is Duncan Shotton. I've been with Atomic Smash since 2019. I just realised this morning, actually, in that photo, I'm wearing exactly the same jumper. So obviously that's part of my company branding, maybe. I've moved through a few different roles in the business. So I started as a digital project manager, then moved into production manager, client partner role, and at the moment, and for the last 2 years, I've been head of Always Evolving. And as Mike says, Always Evolving is our retainer model, essentially. So our broad concept as Atomic Smash and a client-facing concept is that a client's business needs to adapt to compete inside their business, and so should their website. Always Evolving is a strategic alternative to building an entirely new website every couple of years. Broadly, how that works is we identify opportunities for improvements, we make performance strategies, we actually build and work on those improvements, and we launch, test, and repeat the whole process. We have agreements with clients every month for a certain amount of days, for a certain amount of services, and we do that on a continuous cycle. We really believe in Always Evolving and this way of working with clients, so much so that from about last month, we actually stopped pitching for new build projects completely, and are really focusing on our Always Evolving model and our retainers, as Mike said, and that is basically inheriting code bases from builds that already exist and building on them gradually and rolling out improvements month by month. We've been retaining clients and those rolling agreements for up to 9 years in some cases, and it's actually really hard to deliver and make that a success for the client, for the client's business, for your team as an agency, and for the agency as a business. So what is really key for us, and as we've focused and specialized in this way of working with clients, is how we're set up sort of behind the scenes to actually deliver, keep the client happy, keep our team happy, and make it work for both businesses. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is designing the service machine. I'll be going through the benefits of this way of working, our team structure and client monthly agreements, our core services and roles. I'm going to be introducing a case study where we have an existing client, an existing retainer, and we grew that retainer. Then I'm going to be talking about our day structures, task flow, capacity, which means we can deliver and shows how we can deliver on the agreements that we're promising clients. And then talking about velocity checking, which can result in either growth of an existing client or retention. So this presentation and our way of working is all based on making that work and being able to deliver. So I'll jump straight into it. So always evolving, as I imagine most of the audience is from agencies or running agencies and looking for the benefit for an agency. And there is benefit, but really how we see it, and we know how it works because of our experience, is it actually leads to a better partnership. So it's less client and supplier, and it's more like a joint team, and which is specializing on the digital arm of the business. So better partnerships in terms of relationships between client and agency, and also understanding of both businesses, both the agency understanding the client and the client understanding the agency, and how they work and how they can work together to deliver everything smoothly and get good results. These are the kind of three pillars that I've picked out that make these better partnerships work. So frequent direct communication. We have status calls with our clients every week. So we're always talking to them. And it's direct communication as well. The client are speaking to not only client partners, but also designers and developers. And the developers are not getting a brief from a project manager type role. They're hearing it directly from the clients. And so they can understand the client's real missions and goals and what they want, and be able to like suggest solutions based on that. So that's really important. For the client, they have these planned transparent budgets. So transparent budgets, so they already know they're going to invest so much per month for the year, for example. So knowing that upfront and sort of agreeing that upfront is really beneficial for them. So there's no sudden, oh, we have to build this now and we need to find internal budget to do it. That's all planned up front. And obviously the agency benefit of that is there's that reliable income stream, and it avoids the peaks and troughs, like you said, Mike, for working on a more project new build type way. Another advantage for a client is the guaranteed availability, because that agreement's in place. We're already penciling in time with our team to deliver upon those agreements and budgets. And again, for the agency, we know the capacity that we need to prep to be able to deliver. So all of those 3 points is just a better partnership for everyone. This is our pod structure. So per pod, we have a group of clients. So for example, pod 1 clients in here. And in that pod, we have 1 client partner and 3 developers. And that real core team means that the client get a kind of specialized service. The client partner knows the client really well and knows the clients in the pod really well, so that they can understand the priorities of everything. The developers are then become more specialist in the code bases for each client, and they work with them again and again, month on month. They're really like versed in how the code bases work. And the client basically gets really specialist service. It also means if there needs to be flexibility and things need to change, the client partner has a really good gauge of what's happening, who's doing what's high priority, what's less priority, what can wait, and change around things. And that bit have benefits for the client if they need something urgently, or in the opposite way, they're suddenly blocked on something and they can't deliver content or something, we can push something back. And that equally has benefit, that flexibility has benefit for us as an agency, because we can have that flexibility and swap things around when we need to. So we currently have 3 pods in the business, and that's what we're trying to build more of. We also have shared resources which go across all those pods, an insights team, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. We have designers, support developers, QA engineer, and solutions architects.
Duncan, on across those 3 pods, how many clients are they managing?
The kind of limit or the ratio that we want to talk about is about like 6 to 8 in there. So it kind of depends. If you could have maybe up to like 12 very small clients on small agreements, or ultimately one massive client with a big agreement. And it's ultimately related to the capacity of those 3 developers, and how much work those 3 developers are doing on average is how much work the client partner is working with the client to talk about, and then schedule in and reprioritize and all that kind of thing. So yeah, that ratio is really what works to deliver for, on average, about 5, 6, 7 clients. But in each pod, we have a mixture of some larger clients, some smaller clients.
Okay, thanks.
So these are our core services and roles in the business. So there's the insights team, which is the data focused strategy team. They're really talking to the clients and being proactive with the clients of looking at data, analytics, heat mapping, user testing, and figuring out what we should do and why we should do it and what tangible outcomes we'll get, and really guiding what work we do. Client partner is a real kind of cornerstone to making everything happen. They're equally looking after the client as they are looking after the projects and the internal team in their pod. The production segment is really where the magic happens. This is where we actually do improvements to the site, either development or design, and really adding new features to the site. And then scheduled maintenance is deliberately separate, because as most people know in the call, the maintenance just has to be done and it needs to be kept up with. So that's deliberately out as a separate section. The support developers are there, so they have a broader knowledge of a lot of sites rather than specialist in particular sites, but it means they can be really reactive to client requests. If there's a quick question that a client just needs to know an answer to, they can give some advice. If there's a sudden bug or problem on a site, they can be really reactive to get straight on it. And having that in place means that the developers that are working in the production team aren't disturbed, and the improvements that we're planning in and scheduling actually are delivered. Yeah, these are like the fundamental consistent elements in each of the agreements, and this is what's defined how many days for each section in our agreements, and even in billing. This is, in an invoice, these are separated this day for this day for this day. So we basically have 3 monthly plan types. I'll go through them one by one. So support and maintenance is the kind of traditional, you've built a site, keep the lights on, keep everything up to date. And that's not really what we're specializing in, but is a retainer of sorts. So that's just basic maintenance of a site and support, not a lot of interaction with the client normally. And we're definitely not talking about active improvements. This as well is like a minimum days example. Obviously a more complicated site needs more maintenance every month, and a site that's actually not built very well that we've inherited might need more support to like fix bugs when things constantly start falling off. So moving into the middle plan, our always evolving, this is where the bulk of our work is, 75% ish. So that is the same maintenance and support, but with actually doing active improvements. So that's production time to make new features and talk about adding things to the website, and a client partner involved to start to talk to the client and understand what they want to do, and report on what we are doing, and also speak to the team and make sure everything's scheduled in and everything actually happens. So that's where the bulk of our clients are. In the last year, I would say, or we've started to invest in this insights team, basically offered requests from our clients where they really want us to be proactive and guide them as to what the best things are to do on their website, rather than be this middle plan is typically more reactive. A client says, I was talking to my team today and we think this page could be improved, or we're not really happy with it. Of course, we could do this, this and this. Whereas including the insights team, we're really looking at the data for the client and being on their side and saying, you could get some great gains if you improve the speed of this site. Did you know this page is very slow? Users are dropping off here. these are some of the things that we could do. Do you want to do them? And then, so the actual work that we're doing in production is really guided and makes most efficient use of that budget. So we're doing things that actually are recordable by data as like active improvements rather than just going on a hunch. Most of our clients, even, you know, in this middle section, it's kind of obvious when a page is not great, and the improvements that we do seem, yeah, they're obviously much better. The client that we work with is normally happy with that. The team is normally happy with that. We know it. But having the insights team involved, that's just backed up by data and also driven by data and guided by data. So our plans weren't always this defined. So we've worked with, like I said at the beginning, we've got some clients we've worked with for up to 9 years. So this is an example of an existing client working in a kind of outdated way. It's kind of a challenge for us to grow that client and also to convince them, I guess, to work in a way that is best for them, for us as well, but also for them. So they're getting maximum value out of the services that we can provide. So in this outdated way of working, we had a client partner involved a little bit, but we basically had 11 days of developer days, and the client was super keen to just be in complete control of how those developer days were scheduled and managed and tasks, which was fine. They were happy with doing that, but they definitely weren't getting the best service from Atomic Smash. So some of the results of that way of working meant there was a huge effort and responsibility on the client side for providing those insights, providing the solutions, managing the scheduling and the prioritization of all the tasks, which is actually sometimes fine if they can do it, but it means they can't do things internally in client side because they're, you know, a lot of their time and effort is spent working with us. So that meant actually maintenance was falling behind because it wasn't scheduled in regularly, and we were concentrating on bugs that we'd inherited from a previous code base. We were concentrating on new things that the business needed right now, and maintenance was falling behind. We also did development without those insights and without design team involved. It was purely just development and see what happens. And when there was bugs or something needed like urgent action, that would derail the schedule for the longer term improvements that we're trying to make to the site. So the client was happy, but it wasn't the best service that Atomic Smash can provide. And we were talking with this client to kind of get them on board and change that slightly, but it was taking a long time and involved a lot of effort from our side. But the actual opportunity, or the bigger opportunity for us for this change and growth of the retainer as a business came from a real key person on that client side being no longer available. So we were talking to someone new, saying how it worked at the moment and what we would suggest for working forward. So next slide says the new way of working. So just want to as well highlight this was a plan 6 months ahead, and we're talking about this as a gradual change, which means the client side can cope with it and plan for it in their budgets, and we can cope with it and plan for it in our capacity and make sure we're doing everything like super professionally rather than let's do this tomorrow and then it's a bit of chaos on both sides really. So this is the standard split that we now have. It's resulted in more days. So on the previous slide it was 12 days a month. Now it's 18.5 days a month. So obviously for us, jump down here, 78 days a year budget. So 60% increase. That's really good growth of an existing client. But the reason we did it is for the benefit of the client as well as us. And that's again, coming back to this idea of like partnership. So for the client, they had better use of and documentation of where the budget was actually going because we were in control of it and the client partner is involved more. For the client, they had relief of responsibility of maintenance. They could just leave it to us. We'd schedule it in, it would get done. There was faster, more efficient prototyping because design was involved. We could say, make that prototype in a design file and make changes before going into like full development. And when support is required, we have this support route, which is faster and then doesn't derail the longer term improvements that we're scheduling in with the production team. So as well as just commercial benefit for the agency, this is actually better distribution across our team, so more people involved, less risk, and all of these people in our team, these services, are specific members of the team. So they're actually, the support team are specializing in support, and the production team are specializing, and their schedules set to specialize in rolling out these improvements. But I'm going to move on to the way we estimate or really quote. So we have agreements with clients, and we have a number of production days per month that we agree, way in advance, and we can pencil those in schedules as days, but we want to talk about what we're actually going to do in those days. So when we're estimating and quoting for what we're going to do and what tasks they are, we always quote in quarter day units, which I don't know if is unique, but it's definitely really useful for us. That means, for example, if there's a half day task here and a half day task here for a different client, suddenly this one is blocked, or suddenly this one is higher priority, we can swap those around and it doesn't mess up the schedule for everyone. This example obviously assumes, or I don't know if obviously actually, but it assumes two clients, so a yellow client and a white client. But realistically, this looks like a rainbow in everyone's schedule. But having these quarter day blocks basically makes it a bit like Tetris, and we can move things really freely. That gives flexibility for us and flexibility for clients. So this is the actual day and week structure of our production team. So those 4 quarter day blocks are the 6-hour part of one day, the billable day, we call that. The actual working day for each of our production team is 7 hours. So that gives us half an hour block on each day to have a status call with a client, or join a status call, or do a small deployment to live to make sure everything, nothing's stuck on UAT. As soon as it's done, it can just flow neatly. And there's a little bit of flexible time in there as well. In our week structure, we actually do production days Monday to Thursday, and we leave Fridays for learning and development time, scheduled collabs within our team, and a lot of blocks for 30-minute estimates, which I'll come on to next. This is an example of how tasks and projects really go through the studio. A lot of people ask about the always evolving way of working. Is it closer to agile or is it closer to waterfall? Actually draws elements from both. So this is kind of example of a single task, but it's basically a tiny mini waterfall. So starts here. A task could be introduced by us, by our insights team, by our development design client partners, or it could be introduced by a client either on a status call or from a workshop, or just asynchronously on a project management software. Is a basic brief of where the goals that we're trying to achieve. That then gets scheduled on one of these 30-minute estimate blocks with someone. The client's kept informed who's going to look into it, when it's going to happen, and then that production person will come back and say, this is what we suggest doing, this is how much time I need to do it. That gets discussed, then booked in, so the client knows who's doing it, when it's going to happen, and what budget it's going to be drawing from, and how much budget. After that, after it's scheduled, it will say it will be on UAT. If that's approved and all good to go, it can be deployed to the live site. So it's that's the natural kind of progression of way of new ideas and new things to do coming into the studio and getting onto the live site without too much stress or chaos. And the good thing about working with clients continuously is they understand this process. So they're not expecting an answer to come immediately on a status call. They know it needs to be investigated first. And again, on this example, this, let's say, purple client might be a 1 day a month of production client. And this will be penciled in and will gradually fill that ahead of time. And this example also shows this yellow client has a lot of days, but again, this is more like a rainbow. So having this like set structure means that we can do all this without disturbing other clients, and the clients that we have understand we do it this way so as their work isn't disturbed, as well as, you know, disturbing other clients. So that one. Having this week structure as well means even in a year, we know how much leave someone has. We know when the studio's closed for Christmas, so we can make an average per year of this time actually won't be available. If we assume 4 weeks per month, we can work out that actually a always evolving developer only has 13 days of capacity per month on average. And that once we know that capacity, we therefore know how much each pod has. We know how much, which was your question at the beginning, Mike, how many clients we can fill and with what agreements, so we can actually deliver. And if an agreement grows or a new client joins, we know what they're coming in with and what team members we need to change, what clients we might need to move to actually deliver on it. So again, it's just all part to deliver on what we're saying. So nearly final slide, final point I want to talk about is the velocity check. So it's very easy once the basic agreement is there and the production days per month are understood, to fall into a way of working which is, okay, that's coming up, what are we going to do in that time, and constantly focusing on what are we going to do this month, what are we going to do next month, and more difficult to step back, but really important for the process. So this velocity check is to step back and say, okay, are we doing the right amount of production days per month? Will this achieve what the client wants to achieve? So the basic method of that is to do non-business as usual workshops, understand the goals and the deadlines of the client for those goals. That gives us an opportunity to present the solutions and the tasks with t-shirt size estimates, and we can then plot those t-shirt size estimates and tasks against the deadlines and assume the existing agreement, and say either with the existing agreement you're going to reach those goals guaranteed, so we're all good and we've got a bit of leeway to fit some other things in as we go, which is we always expect, or we say with the existing agreement you're not going to hit those goals unless you increase the agreement. So that gives the client that option and that knowledge ahead of time. The two outcomes are either the client says, yeah, I still want to hit those goals, understand what we've got to do to get them, and that's a growth of the agreement. The other outcome is that they can see that really clearly. They might drop some of the goals and say, look, our budget can't change, but I understand we're not going to get where we want to. So that just adds to happiness and the partnership and the retention of the client, because we're really looking for that partnership together. So I've got some final points. This is my final slide. So just kind of summarizing really the key actions for retainers that work is the frequent scheduled communication with the client. So you're always talking to them. It's like, you know, you're in the same office because you have those regular meetings. So just get those booked in and happening regularly, making your services and the value of those services really clear to the client and to the team that's working on them, and distribute the responsibilities between your team. Give really transparent reporting for, you know, this agreement's been made, you have this production budget, this is exactly what we're planning to do with the production budget, and then in retrospect, this is exactly what we did. And clients really appreciate that, rather than I'm paying this agency so much money and I don't even know where it goes. And we hear that from a lot of clients that join us from other agencies. That's something that they really didn't like and really appreciate in Atomic Smash. Work out all of the background stuff in the team, estimating, scheduling, capacity, so you can actually feasibly deliver. So obviously talked about that. Rolling agreements, including automated billing. So just once that agreement's set up, all of the billing stuff is just in the background. So it becomes less of a you don't hit walls with clients. Okay, we want to do this, but how do we do it? That's a known. It happens in the background, and yeah, it's less of a bump. And then final one, which I just discussed, is about stepping away and actually making sure the agreement that's in place is the right one. Does it make sense to grow that client for the client? Does it make sense for the client? And or are they happy with it? And overall, it's all about better partnerships, happier clients, happier team, efficient use of budgets and effort. And final thing, I just want to say, happier team. It's nice to keep people happy, and people always focus on customers, and customers always right, that kind of thing. They're the most important thing. But the idea between the basic idea of a happier team is they'll be able to do better work, and that's better value for the client as well. So that's the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Duncan. Thank you for, well, lifting the lid, I suppose, on what you guys are doing over at Atomic Smash. It's a very candid view. So no, really appreciate that. Thank you very much. There is one person called User who's raised their hand. I don't know if you want to put your question into the chat, and Duncan can answer it. But I also had a couple of questions for you, if that's all right. When you talked about inheriting websites, it's quite risky, I suppose, because WordPress sites are built in all sorts of good ways. Is there a certain level that you assess websites before they come into your business, so that if it's too bad, I mean, what do you do there? How does that work?
Yeah, there's always a risk in it, and we've got a method of, basically when we're talking to clients, as soon as possible, we want to have like a little look around to make that assessment of the risk. It's to say, so we know it when we inherit it, but actually it's also to communicate with the client. There's quite a lot of things wrong, and maybe the first few things in the first few months, we might use production budget to actually fix those things, or do a mini spike project at the beginning to get it up to a standard that we're able to actually maintain. Because and just making that clear to the client. But that's basically what fuels the industry, is that nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to inherit somebody else's code base. But that's what we're kind of specializing in as well.
Okay. There's a couple of more hands raised. Let me allow to talk, because otherwise I'm not sure if there's a problem with the chat, but let me do that. So Tim, I'm going to allow you to talk. Tim, hello.
Hello, hi. Yeah, the chat is disabled, Mike.
Is it? Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
I've got loads of questions, but the first one to go off, your client partner time. How do you end up charging for that? Is your sort of your 4 blocks that make up 6 hours? Is that all developers, or have you got client manager time in that as well, in those blocks sometimes?
Yeah, so no, the answer is not included in those blocks, and it is managed slightly differently. Basically, the client partner time is, we know the ratio that works, and it's basically 1 to 4. So 4 being the production time, you need 1. If there's 4 production days, you need 1 client partner day at least. And what we do is have an understanding with clients that time it's an estimate when we put it in the agreement, and we're constantly checking it. So at the end of the month, we say there was one day in that example of client partner time. Actually, it took 1.25 days, but that means the client partner needs to be reactive. So if that happens, and then happens on a continual basis, we make a change. If it's a one-off, that's normally kind of fine. Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, thanks. How about I didn't manage to write down all your support services that you have. Are they charged into, will they be those quarter day blocks as well, if you're kind of using an insights guy, or whatever it may be?
Yeah, it's a similar so insights, yes, in blocks, developers and production and design blocks, client partner, which we just talked about, and our support developers. They're basically, we call them reactive services, and so they're managed in the same way. It is an estimate. And with the support days, we make an estimate based on the complexity of the site, perhaps the how demanding the client is, and how much support they actually need, how big their team is, and then we assess it. So and built into that is, and what we say to clients is, some insurance, because we never know what might happen. There might be a sudden uncontrollable by us. Security thing, which we have to jump on. If that goes up over the budget 1 month, unless it's really drastic, maybe it's not a problem. If that continually happens, then we talk to the client constantly and say, we need to re-estimate for this going forward. We need to change that.
I'm just going to add in, there's a couple of other people who raised their hands. So Tim, let me just bring those. I'm going to bring everybody in so that there we go. Anthony, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah. Morning. Hi, Mike. Hi, Duncan.
Yeah.
I run a branding agency, but very different sort of business model to yours, really. But we are trying to get more retained work. But we have also a project manager as well as a sort of client services sort of person on an account. Who does the project management work for you, and also the scheduling?
All client partner. So it's a good question. It's actually we decided to do that from actually hearing from our clients from previous agencies as well, where they have an account manager, and it feels like they talk to the account manager talks to the production team, who goes back to the account manager, goes back to the client, and they don't like that kind of, typically don't like that kind of middle person role. So the client partner effectively does the account management, or traditional account management, the project management, and the team management for the team, which includes like the scheduling, setting up, making sure everything's not blocked. And so it's actually a really demanding role. But we've got some really good people in place. Does that answer your question, Anthony?
Yeah, we've struggled with that because we find that if the account manager is doing the project management, that they're terribly busy doing the doing, and they're struggling to sort of step back and sort of look at the account and from a more sort of strategic point of view, really. But yeah, I guess it's a bit of a rare talent, really. Yeah,
I mean, definitely we find the same is also difficult for us, even with because there's just so much going on. That's actually the reaction we have eventually done, is bringing in this specialist insights team to kind of lead that strategic arm of the discussion with clients. The important thing about that is, though, that the client partner is still involved, so they still know what's happening, but they're also concentrating on day to day, month to month, but know what's coming up longer, and supported by that separate team.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Martin, do you want to unmute and ask your question, if you can? No. Okay. Paul, would you like to unmute if you can? There we go.
Hi there. Been frustratingly trying to let you know that chat's been disabled.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know why that is.
That's all right. That's a bad mark. Right, you gotta get yourself in. I've got lots of questions. So do you operate a tiered pricing model there, or is a flat rate per hour for all resources?
So the 3 plans I shared are the kind of different types of ways we work, but we actually, depending on what the client needs, we just flex to that. One of the most difficult things is if the client doesn't have enough budget, but still wants the extra service, and it's basically just near impossible because they're not paying for it. So we have support and maintenance clients that actually want to do active improvements, and they want to do it more in like a spike project ad hoc way, but it means we can't prep for that capacity. We don't want to prep for that capacity because it makes us less efficient as an agency, but we're still trying to look after them, but they don't want to commit they don't want to, or they're not able to commit budget to join the kind of always evolving plans, and that's not always just clients being stingy. It's just how their budgeting works internally. It could be like a charity that gets most of their funding from grants, which is like a big pot of money which they need to use in a specific time, so that kind of almost forces itself to be a spike project rather than a continued relationship. But does that answer your question, Paul?
Kind of. Am I all right to ask a couple more? I don't want to hold the time. Right. So, do you have any kind of internal SLAs? If I'm a client and we raise a need, do you have an aim to get that scoped, developed, QA'd, and deployed within a certain amount of time for a? I'm guessing you call your different tiers pods 1, 2, and 3. Is there a different SLA for the pods 1 versus the pods 2? So everything, if possible, will always be completed within a window of either like 4 to 6 weeks maximum, or do you not have that kind of SLA structure against the different pod levels?
We do have a SLA agreement, and the paperwork that comes in when we're doing the initial agreements with clients and defining kind of the velocity that we're going to be working at, how much days they have per month. As I showed in the mini waterfall example, for each task, they could be quite small tasks. So,
sure,
if it's a quarter-day task, it's quite straightforward. We talk about that much more loosely, and going more formally than that actually is, it's nice to have that, but it's like we have to make a judgment as to whether it's worth the effort. So normally we have a broad SLA to cover like an agreement, and then on a task by task basis, we normally don't have formal paperwork, but it's more like, this is the task that we're planning for, in a few months' time. Get the brief nailed, ask all the questions up front before it goes in. So it's a lot lighter touch. Whereas if there's a bigger move, and normally it's when it gets into like there's not an exact day, but if there's like a 6-day project, when it starts getting to weeks rather than days,
sure,
that's when we start to introduce a more formal assessment and plan of what we're going to do.
Okay. You said that your pod 1s typically service 6 to 8 clients.
Mm-hmm.
How's that working in terms of your split, a percentage of kind of risk? What the pod 1s, pod 2s, and pod 3s? Pod 1s represent 10% of your customer base. Your pod 2s, and down to a larger pod 3, or have you got even splits across the pods?
So for always evolving, support and maintenance is separate, because there's no client partners involved, no production going on. So that's outside of the pods. So in the pods, we generally try to aim to have a mix. So some larger clients with larger agreements, larger budgets, and some smaller ones. And that means the smaller ones need less care normally.
So it's not necessarily revenue driven then?
No. So yeah,
okay.
It's capacity driven per pod, and once a pod's full, that would or once all pods start to be fuller, and either existing clients are growing or more new clients are coming through the door, that's when we branch off and make new pods.
Okay. Interesting. Last 2 questions, I promise. Did I see correctly on the slide where you showed the case study that you got planned out 18.5, was it days or hours per month?
Days.
Okay. So how that's a good sell, because at 18.5, that's almost a full continuous full-time 20-day month work, which is a lot. I don't think I've ever come across a retainer agreement where we've got anywhere close to that. How do you balance that versus, hey, I'm just going to get my own internal team and do this?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that a client will consider, but generally it's that we can provide all the pieces distributed with a load of members, but as a single agency. So I outlined the 5 kind of specialist things, including like the client partner role, which is even like the project management. If you hired a single developer, some developers are good at project management, but if they're doing project management, it's actually way better for them to just be doing development, and so it's that way of getting all of those specialisms and providing all those specialisms as distributed services all under one umbrella, rather than seeking a single person to get in-house that can do all of them really well.
Okay, that's interesting. So my last question, and you can be as candid with this as you like. What's your typical day rate?
I probably won't say.
Give me an upper and a lower.
I can definitely say that it's consistent. So we do have I mentioned charities. So if there's
Right.
a charity or local organisation that we're, more inclined to just support as a business, it's something that we want to do. They've got a lower day rate, but but 4 years ago our day rates were there's more difference in day rates between clients because they came on they were different type of clients that came on at different times. But
Right.
at the moment, our standard day rate is something that is a standard, and that just makes assessing our business and how many days we've got against the standard day rate a lot easier.
We've also
Okay, now,
if you want to download our agency retainer report, we've kind of got broad day rates in there as well. If you want to have a look at those, which I can.
yeah, it's always an interesting question. Obviously, that's can't see. I've been on a couple of these before, not necessarily with Nimbus, and we were kind of thought that there might be like their threshold seems to be £1 million turnover agency below and above, and there's a definite set of day rates there. I don't know why I'm gesticulating here, but no one can see my hands going up and down. And then obviously some kind of geographical position as well that may affect the day rate. So it's interesting information just to mull over. Thank you for being as candid as you have been, Duncan.
You're welcome. Thanks for your questions.
Thanks for your questions, Paul. I'm going to go to Martin again just to see if you want to come in. If not, I'll go to Tim. So Martin, are you able to unmute yourself? No. Okay. Tim, I'll come to you.
Hello again. Just continuing on the day rate. Do you offer a single day rate per client? So it doesn't matter what resource they're using. It's the same price to as you're planning.
Yes. Yeah. Short answer is yes, and it's the main reason is just to make it clearer and more understandable. But for us to assess our capacity versus income coming in, but also just to make it neater and cleaner for the client in some respect, because we don't want to say this is for this and this is for this. I mean, it just always gets a bit more confusing and adds stress rather, where it's not really a benefit for a client.
Yeah. Great. And just going back on to you said you push back very hard on the sort of spiky projects and trying to resist those. I wasn't entirely clear. Are you actually just saying flat out no to those now? Yeah, you're just saying sorry, we can't help.
Sorry, yeah. So for new clients, if a new client came through the door and said we need a new website, we'd probably say, and I'm not in the sales team, but our basic premise is that that's not really what we do. Now we don't have a specific projects team. We are basically always evolving. What occasionally happens is our clients that we've worked with in Always Evolving for years and years, they have a big change in their business, and they suddenly need a huge change to their website. And again, for their funding, it's like they've got that budget injection which they need to do within a period of time, and then they want to go back to a more like gradual retained style. So for existing clients, sometimes we are doing bigger spike projects, but at the moment, new clients we don't.
Grand. Do you ever have issues with clients thinking that they're not getting much for their day of time? I'm sort of especially thinking about your kind of quarter day rate, where you sort of, if you're just saying one little change, it's quarter of a day.
To be honest, the biggest feedback we get is that they're actually happier when they know that's going to happen. And like I mentioned, it's more like media-based agencies. I think their experience where they're putting money into a pot every month, and they don't actually see where that money goes. The previous agency has told them, we're doing all this good stuff. They don't really understand what's going on, but they're saying, and you just need to pay more. So when they come to Atomic Smash, they're actually quite kind of I want to say almost like pleasantly surprised. But for us, that's a kind of standard to say, this is what you're paying for, this is what you're getting. And for the quarter day tasks, it's just about explaining. And there's not loads of quarter day tasks, but it's just about explaining to the client to do it safely and to do it rigorously and to do it really well. Even if it's a small change on a code base, we want a developer to go in, make the change, push it to UAT, or sorry, even their local environment, test it, then push it to UAT, test it, then come back to them and give the client some commentary and document, this is here now, you can review this link, all that kind of stuff. And it all takes time. So even for a small change, to do it really well and provide and even to deploy it to live, eventually test it again, there's not a lot of tasks that are less than a quarter day, which is an hour and a half. Super minor ones we can group together, but usually that's our base kind of block for scheduling in a schedule.
Yeah, and for those that you're not scheduling, so your reactive support type stuff, is there any differences there in how you treat that?
That is largely with the support team. So they will, if a question comes in and it's an actual quick fix, or they just need a technical person to check something, obviously they get back to that straight away. If it's a problem that, in some cases we've made a mistake, the support team are able to be reactive and just say, this is a priority thing, we just need to do it now, which helps us, although we don't have that many mistakes. And yeah, does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, I think so. It's always quite challenging. That I find that side of it very challenging to make that work smoothly. It's you can have the greatest looking slides as to how we work, and then that seems to be the one that breaks everything.
Yeah, I think that's basically separating those services into two distinct services and separate teams is the crucial thing, and communicating with clients what needs to go through different avenues. So if the client knows it's they want a new template, they don't go to support, they go to the always evolving core team, and we start to talk about it and plan it and brief it in. If the client has a super panic and they get a message from one of their plugin developers to say there's been a security breach or something like that, they know to go straight to the support team. And what that means is those core developers that are doing the production work, as soon as they hear there's a problem, they're naturally drawn to oh, maybe that was me, I need to check it right now. But actually that then derails them from doing production work on maybe another client's work, so it actually disturbs another client. So yeah, what's really key is to separate those two teams, those two communication methods, and those two elements of the agreement and the budget.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. I'm going to ask Pete, because Pete's got a question just to, I'll mute you at the moment, Tim, but thank you very much for your questions. If you've got any more, do come back in. But for now, Pete.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Duncan, for your time. All very interesting stuff. Just following off the back of what you just said there, actually, around the communication methods and the different teams. Do you give your clients a sort of dedicated support line for the things that are that they deem to be support, and they come into a different team, or is it all coming in through the client partner?
Yeah, good question. So support team has a support desk. We use at the moment, we use Zendesk. Mm-hmm. So it's all via email, and the always evolving core team has a piece of project management software. In the past we've used Jira, which I don't like, Trello, which is okay but doesn't work for bigger clients, and we're now moving to monday.com. Mm-hmm. And all of the things go there instead of email. Even like, I've got this new thing I want to discuss, add it straight to the project management tool, and that's then visible to anyone. We basically tried to discourage email as much as possible, and the same for shared Slack channels and things like that. What can happen with support is that exactly the reason I said we don't want everyone to see the support ticket initially is so that the support team can, so it doesn't derail the production team. The support team can do an initial assessment, and if they need support from those specialists in the team, they can escalate that, rather than having 3 different conversations going off in different areas and on the phone and on email and on Monday.com and on Zendesk, and then it's really hard to track, like, what does the client know, who's updating them, who's doing it, all that kind of thing. So yeah, we have specific tools to do different types of work, and we try to be as clear as possible to clients of where to put them. If it's less urgent support, that's the kind of thing that a client might bring up on a status call. So again, that's a good reason to have those in regularly. And they say, oh, I was thinking about this, or I noticed this on the dashboard. What should I do with it? Is this an improvement or is this a support thing? And then our team can actually guide them on the call, say, oh no, I can do that now. It's just I need to change a toggle in the back end. I'll do that now for you and show them how to do it. If it's a known improvement, add it to the project management board or on Monday.com, and we can process it that way. If it's support can help with that, log it as a ticket there. We can kind of guide them there.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm just curious because during that line between support and an improvement, it can be a bit tricky particularly with clients, them thinking, oh, this is a quick and easy change. Can you do this today? And it turns out actually, that's a couple of days work. So I'm just curious to know whether you have sort of different methods, and if some of those requests come in via support, but then ultimately end up with the client partners saying, well, actually, this requires a little bit more conversation and working out. But I guess, if you kind of share those communication methods in a way, then I guess that solves that problem for you.
Basically, what we say to clients is as well that they can't go wrong, as long as they're only entering it in one place, and we say, don't do it. If it goes into the support system and it is an active improvement, the support system can also say, understand this, I've gathered a bit of the brief, I've exported this to Trello, I'll close this ticket, and then the client partner will follow up with you and then talk about it that way. So we just manage them in both scenarios. I guess if they come in the wrong direction from the client's point and the client doesn't know, we can just advise them to go the other way, and the client can't really go wrong. The only thing we try to discourage is talking about them in multiple places all at the same time. Yeah,
makes sense. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete. Well, look, we're almost coming to the hour. So, Tim, I'm going to come bring you in. But if you can ask your last question, and then we'll have to close, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Maintenance, does that get dealt with by your support team or via the production team?
Good question as well. And we still are discussing that as what is the best method. What we've done in the last few years is had that with the production team, just because they are the specialists in that with that code base. So, and they've been making those active improvements. If there's a new feature that they've developed, which, actually I need to update the cookie settings on that on the cookie plugin, I can do that as part of maintenance before it gets deployed, and that they know everything that's changing on the site as well. And they are specialists in the code base, so it's really good from that point of view. The other thing is maintenance for a client partner is requires less effort. They just have to book it in, and it's the responsibility of that developer to keep everything up to date and maintained and flag if there's a problem. But otherwise, it's that developer's responsibility to prioritize all the tasks, updating the core, updating plugins, and various other things like the security patches, all this kind of stuff. So including the maintenance blocks within the production team's schedule means that the client partner is not managing every single block of work of those developers with so much attention, and they just have to book the maintenance ones in. And then once they're booked, they just kind of happen in the background, and the client partner can be confident, and the client can be confident that they are happening. And then the remaining blocks that are available and the remaining capacity, that's where there's more effort on the client partner's side to refine the brief, make sure estimates are put in, understand how they're applied to budgets, talk with the client, all that kind of thing.
Brilliant, thanks. And similarly, training which team deals with that?
So training for clients. So normally, as we're working, if there's a new person on the client side, they might need training. So we can just talk about that as a task. It could be client partner, part of client partner time if they have good knowledge about how the site works. It could be a developer if it's really like back end and a bit more technical. Because we're working with clients for a long time, like I said, up to 9 years. Normally they know how the current site works, unless they have new people. And if we're developing a new feature, that's part of that new feature's work. So in the mini waterfall example I showed, that on UAT for a small task might just be, here it is, you're expecting it, so that there it's done. If it was a more like a 3-day task, there might be a half a day of that is a training, and that might be creating a video at the end of that block to say, this is what I've set up, this is how it works, you click here to make this, and actually do the training. And then that video is then, we use a tool called Loom for doing those training videos, and then that gets added to the client's kind of documents to look at a later date. And that's for like more in depth. If it's smaller training, we can just do that like on status calls. This is live now, this is how it works, are you happy with that? And then they usually are. Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks for brilliant webinar all around. Really interesting.
Appreciate that, Tim. Thank you. And thanks, Duncan. And I know that annoying that the chat didn't work, but actually it's turned out quite well with you guys being able to have a decent conversation. So it's probably turned out to be much richer. So yeah, thank you, Duncan. Really appreciate you going through that. And as I said earlier, like lifting the lid of the whole of what you guys are doing over there. And thanks everybody for making, for turning up and asking lots of good questions. So all I have to say is thank you very much. And what I'll do is on the thank you email to this, I will send out a link to the agency retain report as well. So if you do want to have a little look at some of the other things and the benchmarks that we've done from, I think it was about 200 odd agencies that we researched. So if you want to do that, you can. But yeah, look, thank you. Thanks, Duncan. Thanks for coming on. And thanks to everybody else. Bye.
Thanks for the invite. Thanks, everyone. Bye.